My manipulative sister turned our parents against me for staying loyal to her ex-husband. And now she's turned on them too, demanding a lavish wedding they can't afford. 3 years ago, my twin sister, Linda, stopped speaking to me and pressured our parents to do the same, all because of a reason that's utterly ridiculous. To give some context, back then, she was going through a divorce from her husband, Matt. Matt wasn't just her husband. He was also my close friend. In fact, they met through me since Matt and I had been friends since college. Despite the close bond I shared with Matt, my relationship with Linda was always rocky. Even though she's only 16 minutes younger than me, she was always treated like the baby of the family, earning special treatment from our parents. I think it was because she was their only daughter, but they were always softer on her, while they were stricter with me since I was their son. As a result, I couldn't help but harbor some resentment toward Linda, because I always felt like our parents gave her preferential treatment. She grew up a bit spoiled, getting away with everything while I got scolded for the smallest things. This favoritism contributed to her bratty attitude, which only deepened the rift between us, even though she was my sister. I remember one specific incident when my parents tagged me in a family Christmas photo that included both Linda and me. Matt saw the picture on my profile and immediately asked me to introduce him to my sister because he was captivated by her looks. I was reluctant at first and tried to dissuade him for a while, but when I realized he wouldn't give up, I decided to talk to Linda about it. Even though our sibling relationship was strained, Matt was my good friend, and I figured if he wanted to pursue Linda, I shouldn't stand in the way. So I asked Linda if she was open to me giving Matt her number. To my surprise, she didn't object, and I ended up playing matchmaker, setting them up to meet. They hit it off right away and started dating while we were still in our first year of college. Their relationship lasted 6 years before they eventually got engaged. I was genuinely happy for them, especially because Linda seemed more tolerable when she was with Matt. I even served as the best man at their wedding, truly glad for both of them. However, after just 2 years of marriage, things fell apart in the worst way possible. Linda, being true to her self-centered nature, cheated on Matt. It wasn't even like she was unhappy in the marriage. She just decided to have an affair with a colleague out of boredom. Matt found out by checking her phone. When he confronted her about the infidelity, Linda casually admitted that she was bored and that the affair didn't mean anything to her, saying she'd be willing to work things out. But trust once broken isn't easily repaired, and Matt decided he couldn't stay in the marriage. Shockingly, Linda still had the nerve to demand alimony, despite being the one who caused the breakup. Naturally, the divorce became a messy ordeal, and I sided firmly with Matt. Even though Linda was my sister, she was in the wrong, and I had no reason to support her actions. Linda didn't like that at all and went to our parents, complaining that I was being disloyal by staying friends with Matt instead of backing her up as her brother. To my disbelief, my parents actually took her complaints seriously and arranged a family meeting to confront me about my loyalty to Matt. They demanded I cut ties with him, insisting that as part of their family, I shouldn't side with someone who hurt Linda. They saw my friendship with Matt as a betrayal. I argued that their demands were absurd and pointed out that Matt had been my friend long before all of this. I said I wouldn't cut him out of my life, especially since Linda was the one who cheated. If the roles were reversed, I might have done what they asked, but I couldn't justify abandoning Matt for no reason. Linda was furious, accusing me of always being insecure and jealous of her. She went on to accuse me of sabotaging her on purpose, so that she wouldn't get anything from the divorce settlement. At that point, I lost my cool and told her straight up that she didn't deserve anything due to her lack of morals and ethics. We got into a heated argument, and I ended up storming out early. I expected my parents to reach out soon to try and mend things, but when they did, it wasn't what I hoped. They informed me that they had decided to cut me off completely, because Linda demanded it. According to her, I wasn't loyal to the family, and unless they severed ties with me, she would distance herself from them. Linda gave them an ultimatum, making them choose between me and her, and unsurprisingly, they chose her. They even tried to convince me that all of this could be resolved if I just let go of my friendship with Matt. But I knew then that my principles mattered more than their misguided loyalty. So I wished them well and accepted that we were done. 3 years have passed since that fallout. Matt and I remain close, but I haven't spoken a word to my family in all that time. Occasionally, I see them around, but we avoid each other like strangers. It still hurts that they picked Linda over me, but I've come to terms with it. Just when I thought they'd never reach out again, my parents contacted me out of the blue. To my disappointment, it wasn't to apologize, but to ask for financial help. My restaurant had recently become very successful after a popular blogger's glowing review, and business was booming. My parents clearly saw this as an opportunity, and it turns out they needed money, not for themselves, but for Linda's latest wedding. She's set to marry the same colleague she cheated with, and they've been together since the divorce. They reached out to me because Linda wants this new wedding to be even more extravagant than her first. 4 days ago, my parents showed up at my doorstep, and I was shocked to see them. Against my better judgment, I let them in, thinking they might want to reconcile. We made some small talk, but soon they got to the point. They needed money to fund Linda's dream wedding, which was now estimated to cost a staggering $90,000. They explained that while the wedding wasn't happening for several months, Linda's expectations were sky high, and they'd already promised to cover the expenses. However, their retirement savings couldn't stretch that far, and her fiancé's family wasn't willing to pitch in either. My parents pleaded with me, saying this wedding was everything to Linda because of how tough her divorce from Matt had been. They claimed that helping fund her wedding would be a way for me to finally be a good brother to her. They acted like this was my chance to make up for the last time I refused her demands. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laughed in disbelief and told them there was no way I'd help fund Linda's wedding, not even if I had all the money in the world. They were stunned and offended, and instead of leaving, they began arguing with me. They accused me of having no sense of family loyalty and claimed I was being petty and jealous of Linda. This accusation hurt even more coming from them because they knew exactly how they'd treated me differently from her all my life. In a moment of frustration, I reminded them how their favoritism toward Linda was the root of the problem. I told them they were responsible for the way she turned out, spoiled and selfish. I pointed out that if Linda genuinely cared about them, she wouldn't expect them to sacrifice their savings for her wedding. I made it clear that my lack of willingness to help was simply a reflection of their own actions toward me. If Linda truly valued them, she would have realized that asking them to finance a luxurious wedding was unreasonable. But she didn't, and that's on them. After my blunt words, my mom broke down in tears, and my dad cursed me out before they stormed off. At the time, I felt justified in what I said, but later, I received a message from my dad saying how disappointed he was in me and that my words had devastated my mom. Now I'm conflicted. While I think they deserve to hear the truth, I also feel a pang of guilt for hurting them so deeply. Did I go too far by telling my parents that both their kids don't care about them because of their own behavior? Update 1. Hey everyone. After reading through the comments, I've come to realize you're right. I don't have any reason to feel guilty. I think my sensitive nature might be why I initially felt bad for saying those things to my parents. But the truth is they absolutely deserved it, and I shouldn't feel bad at all. It's been a week since that conversation, and I've gone ahead and blocked them. The irony is that my dad unblocked me just to send that message, even though he hadn't bothered to check on me once in the past 3 years. That just proves how self-centered and uncaring they are, and I'm finally okay with telling them I genuinely don't care about them either. A lot of you asked if Matt was aware that Linda is getting married again, and yes, he knew. She announced her engagement online a couple of months back, which is how he found out, so he's been aware of it for a while now. He's fine with it too. The divorce was so ugly that it helped him move on completely, and now he feels nothing for her. Matt didn't date for quite a while after the divorce, but last year he started seeing other people again. He's doing great these days, and we still make time to catch up every couple of weekends. I even told him about my parents showing up and asking me to chip in for Linda's wedding, and he assured me that I did the right thing by turning them down. We actually found it pretty funny that Linda supposedly needed therapy after the divorce because she was traumatized. It's ironic considering she was the one who lied through her teeth to make Matt look like the villain so she could squeeze alimony out of him and justify her cheating. I have no clue why she would need therapy when she was the one who hurt everyone else. For now, I plan to keep my distance from my parents and go back to not speaking to them. That's definitely the best thing for my mental well-being, and I'm really hoping they don't try to reach out again because I want no part of this drama anymore. Update 2. So about 2 weeks ago, my parents visited me. That meeting ended pretty badly. I blocked them afterward, hoping that would be the end of it, but they contacted me again today. I think they used a burner phone because I didn't recognize the number. They called while I was busy at work, and I answered, thinking it was something important. As soon as I heard my dad's voice on the line, I was ready to hang up, but he quickly mentioned that he was outside my restaurant and insisted that he needed to see me. He begged me to meet him for coffee, saying he wouldn't leave until we talked. I told him I was at work and wouldn't be free for a few hours, but he said he'd wait, sounding so desperate that I agreed to meet him. I didn't want him storming into my restaurant and making a scene. He didn't say he'd cause a fuss, but I couldn't rule it out, and I definitely didn't want to risk it. So I decided to just bite the bullet and meet him for coffee. After that call, I was too distracted and angry to focus on my work. So I took a break and headed to the coffee shop where he was waiting. When I got there, I went straight up to him and told him that ambushing me like this at my job was completely unacceptable and disrespectful. My dad insisted he wasn't there to ask for money but to talk about my mom, which caught me off guard. He said that ever since our last conversation, my mom had completely fallen apart and hadn't been herself. Even though it had been 2 weeks since our argument, she was still struggling emotionally and had become a shadow of her former self. He said the only thing that could help was if I visited her and tried to talk things out. Seeing how upset my dad looked put me in a tough spot. I didn't want to hurt them deliberately, but at the same time, I didn't feel like I owed them anything after they had ignored me for 3 years. I took a moment to think it over and finally told my dad that I wasn't willing to visit her. And even if I did, I wasn't sure what he expected me to say. I explained that pretending to forgive them would be a lie because I hadn't forgiven them. I couldn't forgive them since they never once apologized for what they did. My dad got visibly upset when I said I wasn't going to see her, insisting that my mom was in terrible emotional shape because of what I'd said about neither of their kids caring for them. It's true that my mom has always been very sensitive and easily hurt. Even when I was younger, we all had to be cautious with her because she could get upset over the smallest things. While I acknowledged her sensitivity, I reminded my dad that I'm also sensitive, and if she couldn't let things go, then neither could I. I tried to explain my perspective, but my dad kept pushing, saying that I needed to put aside our differences just this once for my mom's sake. The conversation started going in circles, so I finally told him that I wasn't going to see either of them unless they both offered a genuine apology. Even then, I said I'd need time to think about it. They ignored me for years and didn't treat me well even before that, so it's hard for me to care about them the way I used to. I've built a life for myself without their involvement, and they only seem to care now because they want something from me, mainly my money. I told my dad it was unfair of them to expect me to overlook everything just because my mom was upset. I reminded him that I was also hurt when they chose to cut me off, and they never once checked on me after that. I ended by making it clear that I wasn't going to visit my mom, and I warned him that if they continued to harass me at work, I'd have no choice but to involve the police. I didn't want them showing up at my home either, and I made sure he knew I was serious before I left to return to the restaurant and get back to work. I half expected my dad to try something else later that day, but thankfully he didn't. I'm honestly drained from all of this and regret letting them back into my life, even for that brief moment. Update 3. Hey everyone, I'm back, but this time, thankfully, it's not directly about my parents. Well, it sort of involves them, but at least I haven't had to deal with them face to face. Despite the strained relationship with my immediate family over the last 3 years, I've managed to stay close with my other relatives. They all know about the fallout I had with my parents and sister and the reasons behind it, so they've tried to steer clear of the drama. To avoid getting caught up in any conflict, my extended family usually makes sure to invite me and my parents, separately, to family events like weddings and parties. Recently, though, one of my cousins announced her pregnancy, and I noticed that my family wasn't invited to her celebration. When I asked her about it, she said it wasn't because of me, but because she'd had an argument with my sister Linda a few weeks before the party, around the time she shared the pregnancy news online. Linda apparently accused our cousin of trying to overshadow her wedding by announcing her pregnancy around the same time. Linda's so out of touch that she genuinely thought our cousin got pregnant just to steal her spotlight. Understandably, our cousin was fed up with Linda's nonsense and decided to cut her off completely. Who could blame her for not wanting that kind of negativity during such a joyful time? To top it off, my cousin also didn't invite my parents because they decided to meddle by calling her parents and criticizing her reaction. They claimed she was being a brat by making such a big deal over her pregnancy, knowing that Linda's wedding was approaching. So, in the end, I was the only one from our side of the family who was invited, since my cousin knew I had nothing to do with their drama. Although the decision not to invite my parents and sister was based entirely on their behavior, they still found a way to blame me. They posted a statement online accusing me of turning the family against them. They claimed they'd kept quiet for years about my so-called jealousy and insecurity toward Linda to protect my reputation, but now they felt forced to speak the truth because of my actions. They twisted the story, making it seem like it was my fault that our cousin didn't invite them to her pregnancy announcement, and painted me as the villain for staying friends with Matt, even though they claimed he damaged Linda's mental health during their divorce. Naturally, they conveniently left out the fact that Linda was the one cheating on him. They went as far as calling me a selfish, insecure loser, saying they were glad to disown me and no longer consider me their son. Honestly, I can't even pretend to care at this point. Many people sent me screenshots of the posts since I'm blocked, and I told them not to waste their time arguing with my parents because they're clearly too wrapped up in their own delusions. No one whose opinion matters is going to believe a word of what they wrote in that post, so it's not like it's harming my reputation. They can say whatever they want. I'm completely above this nonsense. At the same time, I'm really grateful for the relatives who've stood by my side. Even though they tried to stay neutral before, I'm pretty sure most of the family will now steer clear of my parents and sister after seeing all this unfold. Update 4. Hello, everyone. It's been a few months since my last update because, honestly, there wasn't much to report. After my parents posted that statement online, blaming me for all their problems, most of our relatives cut off contact with them. I'm sure my parents would have liked to pin that on me as well, but there was no point in making more posts about me since the damage was already done, and their situation had reached a point of no return. I've been pretty content without them in my life, and now I'm even happier after finding out from some relatives who still speak to my parents that Linda has cut them off too. Apparently, my parents didn't even attend her wedding a few weeks ago, which raised a lot of questions among our relatives. Those who are still in touch with my parents asked what happened, and they explained that they had to tell Linda her wedding budget was way beyond their means. The story goes that my parents and Linda had a massive argument because she was furious with them for breaking their promise to cover all her wedding expenses. They tried to reason with her, saying they made those promises when they thought the costs would be manageable, but her lavish plans turned out to be too expensive for their retirement budget. Linda, being the entitled person she is, didn't take kindly to their explanation and decided to cut them off completely. Her fiancé and his family ended up footing the bill, which meant they had to significantly downsize and have a simpler wedding without her parents there. Linda doesn't seem too bothered by any of this, but from what I hear, my parents are devastated and hurt that neither of their children seem to care about them. Honestly, it's exactly what I predicted from the beginning. As for me, my life is going great, so I'm not worried about any of this drama. This whole situation just goes to show that karma always catches up with people, and it finally did with my parents. Sooner or later, it'll come for Linda too. Good luck to them. They're going to need it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our stories and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating tales and new content every week. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate every one of you for being a part of our storytelling journey.